Welcome to today's Explainer. Right off the bat, we're going to be tearing down some of the most stubborn, ingrained myths that pop culture has ever fed us. We really love to romanticize the extremes of our world. We look at human intelligence and call it this beautiful biological miracle, like it's the destined peak of evolution. And we look at historical pirates and see these glamorous, rum-drinking rebels sailing the open ocean with, perfect eyeliner. But pop culture has totally blinded us. It hides the incredibly brutal, expensive, and unapologetic realities of survival. Because whether you're an evolving primate on the African savanna or an escaped laborer on a damp wooden ship, survival absolutely does not care about romance, it only cares about pragmatism. Okay, let's dive into this because we're going to directly challenge those assumptions today. We're looking at two seemingly completely different extremes, the biological evolution of the human brain and the historical reality of the golden age of piracy. And what we'll find is that both biology and history operate on strict, completely unforgiving rules. Human intelligence wasn't a miracle, it was a desperate gamble. And the pirate life? It wasn't some grand adventure, it was a highly calculated labor strike. Here's a quick roadmap of how we're going to break this all down. First, evolution's expensive accident, followed by the animal contenders who might just take our place. Then we'll shift over to our historical case study with the pirate reality check, look at the horrifying day-to-day of the brutal business, and finally, we'll cover the ultimate price paid by anyone, or anything, trying to outsmart the rules of survival. All right, jumping right into Section 1, Evolution's Expensive Accident. Let's look at our first case study from nature. We all like to think of our massive, highly intelligent brains as the ultimate biological achievement, right? But from a purely biological standpoint, becoming highly intelligent is actually a terrible strategy. And this brilliantly illustrates just how insanely expensive your brain actually is. Look at these numbers. Even though your brain makes up only about 2% of your body weight, it is consuming a staggering 20% of your energy. I mean, that is just ridiculous. In the animal kingdom, evolution usually prefers faster reproduction, lower energy use, just basic survival efficiency. It doesn't naturally want to build giant, energy-draining brains that sit around philosophizing about what happens after death. So, why did it happen to us? Well, scientists believe it was basically this perfect storm of immense environmental pressure. We were facing ice ages, fierce predators, and intense competition. So our ancestors started walking upright, which, crucially, freed up their hands. Those free hands started using tools. Tools helped us hunt. Hunting required complex communication, which eventually evolved into language. And language is the real game changer because it allowed knowledge to stack over generations until, boom, eventually you get human civilization. Our intelligence wasn't guaranteed at all. If you hit reset and replayed Earth's history, we might never appear again. We were literally just a lucky evolutionary accident created by immense pressure. Moving on to Section 2. The animal contenders. Because here's the fascinating thing about accidents. They can happen twice. Right now, as we speak, there are animals out there using tools, passing mirror tests, and grieving their dead. Evolution might actually be trying to make high intelligence happen again. So the crucial point here is understanding the massive pragmatic flaws that keep these incredibly smart animals from building their own civilizations. Take chimpanzees. They share roughly 99% of our DNA, they use tools, and they even engage in these terrifyingly organized political ambushes and wars. But they don't share information the way we do. They basically reset their knowledge every single generation. And what about the octopus? They have these brilliant, almost alien-like brains with neurons spread throughout their arms. But they die in just a few years, so their knowledge can never accumulate. And dolphins? Man, they have names for each other and extreme emotional intelligence, but they lack hands. It's kind of hard to invent technology or manipulate your environment underwater when you don't have hands. But honestly, there is a much bigger barrier today than biology, and well, it's us. Modern animals are incredibly unlucky because human civilization now completely controls the environment in a way nature never planned for. Think about it. If another species started becoming dangerously intelligent, like say scientists discovered a species of crow building primitive machines, that crow isn't founding a bird civilization. It's getting instantly captured, studied, and definitely put on TikTok. We got here first, and we dictate the environment now. Let's see how this builds perfectly into our next core idea. In nature, environmental pressure forces a species to adapt drastically or die. But what happens when humans face impossible, brutal pressures within their own society? They do the exact same thing. They adapt, they rebel, and they form entirely new systems of survival. Which brings us to Section 3, the pirate reality check. We're looking at the golden age of piracy, roughly the late 1600s to early 1700s. And we need to systematically strip away all that Hollywood glamour to reveal what this really was: a desperate, hyper-pragmatic labor strike. Pop culture loves to sell us the pirate on the left, right? The ocean rock star swinging from ropes, burying chests of shiny gold, and living this life of glorious, rum-soaked freedom. But the right side is the historical reality. It was wet wood, rotting food, scurvy, and fighting to the death over stolen sugar and cloth. These guys were not legends taking a fun vacation with cannons. They were desperate sailors, escaped laborers, and broke young men who literally decided to gamble everything on organized crime. So why would they make a crazy gamble like that? Because the legal alternatives were practically unlivable. On a legal merchant or navy ship back then, captains could beat you, starve you, and work you until your body literally broke, all for terrible pay. Piracy was just a logical career move. And shockingly, it was highly regulated. Pirate ships were actually functioning democracies. Captains were elected and could be voted out at any time. Crews operated on written rules called articles that strictly dictated how the loot was split. Guys, they even had workplace injury compensation. I'm serious. If you lost an arm or a leg in battle, you got a specific agreed-upon payout. It was a structured society built by outcasts just trying to survive extreme pressure. Let's dig into Section 4, the brutal business. Because make no mistake, even with workers' comp, this was definitely not an easy life. The daily operations inside a working pirate ship were absolutely horrifying. A pirate ship was essentially a floating wooden workplace packed with sweaty men, animals, smoke, raw sewage, and disease. Privacy? Completely non-existent. Your bathroom was the open ocean. And the food? Well, it started out as fresh meat and cheese, but weeks later it devolved into salted beef and hardtack. That's a rock-hard biscuit that sailors would literally eat in the pitch dark so they wouldn't have to see the weevils crawling around inside it. Scurvy and dysentery absolutely tore through these crews. And if you were badly injured in a fight, with no surgeon on board, the ship's carpenter might have to amputate your leg with a dirty wood saw, giving you nothing but a rag to bite down on. Now, what's really interesting here is how they actually handled combat. Believe it or not, pirates hated fighting. Naval combat meant massive cannons turning wooden hulls into flying, lethal splinters. So they relied on extreme fear to force an immediate surrender. Blackbeard famously stuffed its slow-burning fuses under his hat so his face was wreathed in this terrifying smoke. It wasn't about him just being evil. It was highly practical. Fear saved time, it saved lives, and most importantly, it protected the cargo. And that cargo, very rarely was it chests of gold coins. They were usually stealing the mundane necessities of the era: sugar, cloth, tobacco, and medicine. To manage all this floating chaos, pirate crews had to maintain incredibly strict internal cultures. Everyone had a clearly defined role, from the quartermaster who handled discipline to the gunner managing the cannons. A lot of ships outright banned gambling just to prevent fights. And incredibly, these terrifying outlaws of the sea often had strict bedtimes required by their articles. It's kind of hilarious when you think about it, but it proves our central point. Extreme environments demand intense cooperation and structure. If everyone on a ship just did whatever they wanted, the whole crew would die. And that leads us to Section 5, the ultimate price. Because whether you're an evolving species pushing the limits of biology or a pirate crew pushing the limits of the law, the environment eventually pushes back. And that brings us to the inevitable, brutal conclusion. 2. That is the staggering number of years the average pirate career lasted. Just a couple of years. It wasn't some 20-year adventure leading to a wealthy retirement on a sunny beach. After a couple of years, the vast majority of these men were killed in battle, drowned in hurricanes, or captured by pirate hunters. And if they were captured, they were dragged into court, sentenced to hang in public, and sometimes their bodies were left displayed in iron cages near harbors as a chilling advertisement for obedience. The harsh reality is perfectly summed up right here. Pirates didn't live outside the rules. They just lived in tiny, violent gaps before the rules caught up to them. The empire, the navy, the environment, they always closed the gap. And this ties perfectly back to our biological thread from earlier. Just like a highly intelligent animal can't outpace the evolutionary pressure of a human-dominated world, the pirates couldn't outpace the societal pressure of expanding empires. The environment always, always wins. So I want to leave you with a pretty provocative thought. Humans overcame massive environmental pressure to develop our expensive brains. We now control the environment, meaning biological evolution as we know it might actually be coming to a halt. No other animal is getting the chance to rise up. So, if biological evolution is hitting a wall and human rules govern the entire planet, what comes next? Some scientists argue that the next intelligent species to survive the pressure won't be biological at all. It'll be artificial intelligence. Perhaps human intelligence was never the final stage of evolution. Maybe we're just another temporary, incredibly expensive experiment paving the way for our own successors. Definitely something to think about. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the rules of the world around you. Catch you next time.